Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first converged Ektron and EPiServer office hours, which I think we're going to rename to the EPiServer Developer Weekly or something like that. May still evolve the name a bit. But if you have any questions for us on this one, then we're using a new hashtag now. And the hashtag is EPIDEV, E-P-I-D-E-V. So if you have any questions about the Ektron EPiServer technology, specifically looking for technology questions, although we'll field everything that we can, just tweet out with that hashtag or jump onto the event page on Google Plus and ask your questions on the message board there, and we'll try to monitor both as best we can. And with that, I'd like to introduce Allan Thraen, who is the reason that we are having this episode a bit earlier in the day than usual.
Sorry, guys.
All good, Allan. Happy to have you. Would you care to introduce yourself and just describe your role?
Absolutely. So, my name is Allan. I've been with EPiServer, we should probably say, this joint crew for about 7.5 years. And I've been doing a lot of different things. I'm a developer at heart, but I've been doing a lot of product management as well. Technology evangelism, developer evangelism, all that kind of stuff. So today I'm kind of like James' counterpart, I would say, and we work closely together on the technology evangelism side.
Yep, and it's only going to get better from here.
Absolutely.
And we also have, so this is Allan's first time, obviously, joining. We also have another first-timer, Brad McDavid. Brad, tell us about yourself and the company you work for.
Sure. My name is Brad McDavid, and I'm the product manager at WSOL. I've been there for about 4 years now in several different roles. I've had about 10 years experience in the Ektron platform, and I've had EPiServer experience since version 7 was released.
Great. So we're going to have a lot of watchers today who are coming over from the Ektron side of the house. And I know there are a couple of roadmap questions on Twitter at the moment, but I want to go to the questions that we got via email first. And Allan, this is going to be coming over to you.
Sure.
As the team community wants to know if they can get a test environment of EPiServer.
Absolutely, and it's quite easy to actually do that yourself, just get started. Basically what you need is Visual Studio 2012, 2013, and .NET 4.5.1. Let me see if I can actually jump in and remember how I actually shared my screen here. There we go. That would be this one here. And if you basically take your Visual Studio, you can actually go right from within Visual Studio. You can go to extensions and updates. And there you can go ahead, look online in the Visual Studio gallery, and you can just search for EPiServer. And that should give you the EPiServer CMS Visual Studio extension. That's a really good thing to have and a good place to get started. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's really helpful.
Now you can do this with the Express version as well, but
yes,
you have to go online and download.
Yes, that's correct.
For that.
I believe it works the same way like this with the community version. That's the new one that's out to replace the Express, I believe. Obviously, I have it already installed, so I'm not going to do that. Secondly, it's a good idea to go to your NuGet package manager and ensure that you have at least the package source for the main EPiServer NuGet feed, which is here. If you forget that one, you can always just take your browser and go straight to nuget.episerver.com, which is a great place also to kind of browse all the stuff. So that feed is a separate NuGet feed for EPiServer related stuff, and it contains obviously all the new versions of all the core of EPiServer, as well as a ton of third-party stuff that gets added there by partners and developers just like you that want to share that stuff. So it's a big mixed channel right now with a lot of different stuff in it, a lot of great stuff. But you kind of have to try it out. We're working on actually splitting it up into several different channels, but that's a different story. So once you have that set up, you can go into Visual Studio, and you can just say new project. And some people prefer to just start clean new ASP.NET project, I like to use the template already in here. So after installing the add-on for Visual Studio, you can actually just select EPiServer and start an EPiServer website. And basically this will give you a menu where you can pick between an empty website or the default starter kit called EPiServer Alloy Technologies, which is a fake company. And you can obviously pick and choose if you want web forms or if you want to use MVC. If you take MVC, you can obviously still add web forms and they can coexist, although it does seem to work best, I guess, if you run one or the other. But I mean, EPiServer fully supports both. It's my experience that most people prefer MVC nowadays. What do you guys say? What do you say, Brad?
In the Ektron world, most people just stick with web forms, so MVC will be a new thing for them to pick up.
Okay, sure. Well, anyway, I mean, both options are there, and it's just a matter of a personal taste. I'm just going to set this on up to start a new empty project, and actually let's do a web form project here then. You don't need the search, just say OK, and it will start setting up a site and give us a completely empty site to start with.
All right, so while that's setting up, Brad, if you don't care, because you've been part of both worlds for a while now, one of the questions that came through is, as a developer, what are the good parts of EPiServer? So what do you really enjoy about EPiServer?
I really like how you can do most of the elements within Visual Studio itself. Like, you're not logging into the Ektron work area to create smart forms. You're creating the page type, which is the smart form equivalent within code in Visual Studio. So you're just creating classes with properties. You decorate them with certain attributes to make them do certain things in the UI, which Allan will probably show here in a few minutes. And it's just much friendlier to work with. And also, it's just overall, as a CMS, it's very extensible. Like, if you don't like how a property renders, through structure map, which probably another topic for another day, but you could go in and change how that property renders by writing your own and then just changing the map in the configuration file.
I guess you could say that EPiServer is very much platform, so it's to be seen almost as a framework on top of the .NET framework, and everything is very standardized and open API-ish, which means that you can go and basically change everything. You can hook in connectors to everything. There are provider models for everything. So it's a very solid framework. The thing, of course, is that you have to perhaps write a little bit more code yourself to build on top of this framework when you start out. Or, of course, you can use the starter kits.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, So yeah, go ahead, Allan. Allan, I got a message from one of our guys over in the UK. It said that the video actually didn't pick up until after the introductions. Would you just give a brief introduction again, and Brad the same?
Sure. Again, I'm a former developer and now product manager and developer evangelist, working with EPiServer for more than 7 years.
Right.
I'm Brad McDavid, product manager at WSOL. I've been there for about 4 years now and familiar with both Ektron and EPiServer.
So if I should just continue on here, I just started an empty project, and it really is empty. I mean, there's a bunch of references to EPiServer stuff in here, but that's about it. There are no models. It's just empty folder structure in here. Just the basic configuration that I need. I do have a database. That's just a SQL Express, a SQLite, I can remember, database. Of course, you can import that to a proper SQL server. But it is actually functioning, yet empty website. The first thing I'm going to do here is actually just going in here, and I'm going to look at the NuGet packages because I want to update it right away. And this is the way that updates generally work. There are new updates every other week, and the way you update is basically by going into the NuGet feed and say, see which ones you want to update, or you can just do as me and just say update all of them. In this case, I actually selected I also want to have pre-releases, so now I'm actually upgrading to a pre-release, which of course you probably just want to upgrade to stable versions. But in this case, I'm not scared. I'm going to go for the pre-release of the version 8 of the CMS.
So this actually highlights another advantage of EPiServer as a platform is the continuous integration. So you actually get product updates on almost a bi-weekly cycle. Sometimes it's a little bit longer than that, but you can go download new versions practically all the time.
Exactly, and so typically the way I see people working with it is that, when they start a project, coding a project, they will of course do it on the latest and greatest, and then, depending on how long the project cycle is, they might do it once or twice, or if there's new feature coming out that they need in the project. Then of course when they are close to done with the project, they'll upgrade against the latest and greatest and just make sure everything runs smoothly, and then they will put it in production. You don't necessarily upgrade production sites this way all the time. I mean, if it works, it works, right?
Right. Yep. But it is there if you wanted to do so.
Absolutely, yeah. And
so
typically it doesn't really take that much. I mean, it does it all by itself by basically upgrading the packages here. And now that the package is upgraded, I can just jump in and I can. I just have to do one more thing. I have to go to my console and I have to also update the database. You can also do this using PowerShell script, but I'm running it from in here. Update AP database. This will basically just apply all the patches to the database to the version that I'm currently on, and this is it. So I can actually now just get started.
It's great that you can do all of that without ever leaving Visual Studio.
Exactly.
Install one version and then
I'm
upgrade.
just going to compile and run. Now don't expect too much because it's an empty site. So you will actually see an empty site right now. But it is in fact running. And the way you can kind of see that is now that it's loading, and I'm going to get a 404 error here because it's an empty site, is that if you go to /EPiServer, which is the default location, which of course can be changed for the backend, that actually loads.
Right. So we've got a question on Twitter. Any thoughts to doing a day of dev training during the November conference, or before that, US-based training? So Ken, what I can say there is that we are doing a roadshow that will not be really a technical dive, but that's coming up for people who just want to know more about what's going on with the merger. That's happening in April-May timeframe. That schedule, I don't believe, has been released yet, but should be coming out very soon. As far as training goes, I'm almost certain that we offer US-based training out of our Chicago office right now, and I plan to attend that myself as soon as I can, as soon as it fits in with my travel schedule going everywhere else in the world. So there are options there, and we can definitely discuss those.
Basically, the developer training is a 3-day course to get started. And I do believe we do have them regularly at the Chicago office. I do think that they also schedule them around other locations in the US on a regular basis, although I haven't seen the latest calendar.
So a question for you, Allan. Well, either of you might be able to answer this, but does EPiServer have something functionally equivalent to Ektron's 3-tier architectures? Basically, do you offer a 3-tier architecture with EPiServer?
Well, actually, maybe that's a good one for Brad, because I don't know Ektron's architecture that well.
The basic equivalent would be to use probably the EPiServer Mirroring product. You really need the runtime DLLs, so it doesn't have a model. I don't think that I'm aware of that actually makes web service calls. So, Allan, what the 3-tier is it basically allows Ektron to run in a web app that has very limited Ektron functionality, and they make a lot of calls through web services to a backend, typically behind a firewall, to get content from Ektron.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so it's separating presentation from application. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, EPiServer basically is Xcopy deployment, if you want. It's a database and a website. What you can do, and what many people do, is that they have a place behind the firewall where they have the full backend installed and accessible, and then they simply either remove the backend or disallow by permissions for all the front-end web servers, but they share the same database. So that's an easy approach to solving the same problem, I would say. We do have mirroring as well, so I mean you can mirror onto just a presentation server if you want to. You could also use content providers, which is a more complex area where you can actually set up an EPiServer to just fetch content straight from another EPiServer, or from any other source, by the way. But in general, I think people prefer to either just have editing environment on the front-end servers, or to have it on a separate backend behind the firewall server.
The EPiServer Roadshow is online, and I'm going to tweet the link out. The schedule is online. I'm going to tweet the link out using our hashtags.
I'm just going to log in here, and I just want to say that, again, a great thing, as I said before, is everything is driven by providers. So in this case, obviously, it's just membership and role providers, and the default membership and role providers set up here is for the local machine. So I'm just using my local administrator password. And I'm failing miserably. That was a bad example. Sometimes when you have various cookies and stuff like that, things doesn't always go the way you want to. So let me just try without my cookies. You can imagine I'm running a lot of different sites on my local machine.
Okay, so Greg Hill is asking what he calls as the elephant in the room question on Twitter. Is there a plan to deprecate or de-support Ektron 8.7 or 9.1 in the near future? Greg, the answer to that is unequivocally no. We're not deprecating support or the products. So you're good to run those for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. But we will, of course, see places where we can collaborate between the two different systems.
Yep.
And have the platform come together and take the best from each, which is why it's interesting to look at this specific platform. Yeah, I don't know if I should go on here. I'm just saying now I'm actually logged into a fully functioning EPiServer.
Actually, Alan, what I'd like to do is we can do a UI overview.
Yeah.
At another time. So can we go into structured content, just take a look at Visual Studio at how pages and blocks are structured?
Absolutely.
So
basically,
for people watching, this would be the functional equivalent of Ektron's smart form functionality.
Exactly. So basically what you want to do is you want to create your content types in code. You can create them in the UI as well. That's what we used to do a number of years ago, but we found out that that everybody preferred to do it in code because that's not something you want editors to change. You basically want developers to be in control of that so it can match up the rest of the site. We operate with the concept of iContent, so an interface-based setup here, and basically everything kind of inherits or implements those interfaces. For instance, if we were to create a new page, just going to go in on pages here and say, and I'm doing this under my modeling. Even though I'm not using MVC, we still have the concept of models. So basically just describe my data model in here. I'm going to go with, again, EPiServer and just say, give me an EPiServer page type. And this could be, for instance, the start page of the site.
So one thing I'd like to highlight here, Alan, is the mixture of, say, more string fields and content areas, because that's something that we've not really been able to do on the Ektron side. In the Ektron CMS, is actually have what we would call drop zones. Page builder drop zones are content areas inside of EPiServer, and so you can have page types that are a mix of drop zones and other fields.
Let's just touch a bit about that here, because basically a page in EPiServer is obviously something that you can access with a URL that contains a number of properties, and typically has one or more renderings. It doesn't have to, but typically it does have one or more renderings to display it. So those are the main building blocks that you kind of have. Now, we realize that in some cases you have a section of content that you want to reuse across multiple pages. That's what we use blocks for. So you can create block types as well. Again, a block is without a URL, but just a collection of properties with one or more renderings. And blocks can be dynamically placed using drag and drop into content areas, which is a property type on the pages. Or on other blocks, by the way, it doesn't really matter. Actually, let me just show you here. I'm defining my page. I've defined it as a content type, and I'm also defining properties on it. In this case, I'm using an XHTML string property, which is the typical editorial kind of field. We could also add just a string field, for instance, which would be a header. You could also add, as you said, a content area, which would be my main area. And in that content area, I can drag and drop anything that has a rendering that fits that area. And it'll basically just refer to that, so you can have reusable pieces of content that you drop into that area. That could, for instance, be blogs. It could be It could be media, it could be images, it could be other pages. If they have a rendering, that means that they can be shown that way.
One nice point about the content area that is kind of a limitation within Ektron drop zones is within the EPiServer content area, you can actually limit the types of blocks and pages that are allowed within that content area. It's almost like saying in a Ektron drop zone, you could say which widgets are allowed to be added to it.
Exactly. And all that stuff is done by basically putting on attributes. So you can say allowed types in here, and by that specify exactly which types do you want to be allowed to drop in there. You could also specify it by having certain tags of the area, which is a different technology that only allows stuff that has a certain rendering to be dropped there. Similarly, I could go in here and I could just create very quickly one block. A good example of a block would be a teaser block, for instance. Teaser block. And again, let's just have the name printed out in this teaser block. For now, we could have many other properties in it. So basically, I have these two concepts right now, and I just need a rendering for them. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create a page. So this is a web form, so I don't need a controller, which I would typically need in MVC. In this case, I mixed my functionality with my view, so I just go new. In this case, it would be page template. So this would be for the start page template. And just to kind of show, this inherits the start page, or it's a generic based on a template page that's based on the start page. This means that whenever I use code in this one here, I can actually access the content that I'm dealing with. Much the same way, I could go in here and just say add new item, EPiServer, and this would be a block template. And let's say that would be my teaser block template. And similarly, because it's basically the same thing I'm dealing with here, I could just make sure that that inherits from there. Now, what this gives me is actually all the time I have access to my current block, so I can always look at the block I'm currently in and all the data it has, including, for instance, the name here.
So we're actually running a bit low on time, and I do want to get to a couple of other questions.
Sure.
So one of the questions that Brad actually answered on Twitter was, does EPiServer have a flavor of widgets and page builder? So yes, that would be the pages and blocks, and then you can actually do content areas inside of the page, just where you drag the blocks. You can do a content area inside of a block. So you can do blocks within blocks, and I've seen that working. It's actually pretty easily done inside of EPiServer. And I'm going to go over to Twitter. There were a couple of questions, roadmap related here from Kurt. Can I speak to the current roadmap for the Ektron platform? Not in great detail in this episode, Kurt, but happy to have that conversation via phone call if you'd like. My email address is james.stout@episerver.com. So feel free to shoot me an email, and let's have that phone call, and we can talk about it in a bit more depth. What are the long-term plans for Ektron? Will the product be merged with EPiServer? The answer to the merge part of that question is yes. The two products are going to be merged, and we're looking at the best of each and trying to bring the best of each together into a single platform. And if so, what is the time frame? Not sure if I can give a firm time frame on that right now, Kurt. But what I would say is, if you look at conference schedules for organizations, people typically like to announce things at conferences. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I would recommend anybody who wants to know as much as possible about that to be at that conference in November. So let me see if there are any others that we can answer. Allan, if not, then I'll let you continue.
Sure.
So we've talked about training a little bit. Destin reminds everybody not to hit Control W while watching.
We can
So
go the in-context editing real quick if Alan can finish the start page and show how
yeah,
you can actually
well,
edit.
I actually just finished it, I believe. So if it works, I could basically just go in here now. I'm in edit mode right now,
yeah.
creating a new page. Let's call it start, and it actually is right there. It's pretty basic HTML because that was just the default I got in there. But we have a field we can actually start entering. This is my.
Yeah, it looks a lot better if you can do that in the context of something like an Alloy site, because this doesn't really convey that you're working on the page canvas itself.
That is true. I am working on the page canvas. I just didn't kind of set that up here. Again, it's easy just to set it up, request it to start an Alloy site like I've done here. And once you end up with a more functioning stuff with more blocks, let me in this one here. No, again, not. I'm not very popular with my my cookies, I guess. I don't know.
But you just simply click on the field, Andrew. If it's just a plain string property inside of the class object, then you click on the field and you don't get any of the WYSIWYG options there. But if it's an XHTML string type property inside of the class, then you get the WYSIWYG experience, but you just click to edit. Alan, do you have that working?
I have it working here, and so basically I'm just going to go into a page here, and you can go in here and you can basically start editing your content straight on the page like this.
Yeah, now I want to point out that it's auto-saving. You can kind of barely see it at the top of your screen, but it does auto-save when you click away from the field or after a set period.
It does, and it also specifies now that there are changes to be published, so I can go up here and publish them if I want to.
Right.
And obviously you can work with all the stuff, and you have blog areas, and you can drag and drop in blogs you would have over here. So you could.
And one quick note about the HTML areas, you can actually drag blocks into the HTML, and it'll use whatever rendering I believe is the default one inside of the HTML area. So it's almost like code snippets and Aloha for Ektron.
Right.
I just did that.
So, Alan or Brad, one of our developers has console apps that they use to update data inside of Ektron. Can the same be done? Can you create console apps that work with EPiServer?
Yes, you can. In fact, I did a demo a few years ago where I ran an entire EPiServer CMS site in a console. Because everything, I mean, it does take a bit of code to do that because everything can be replaced. All the basic code elements, since we're using a structure map, you can replace everything and set it up for console use. An easier solution is probably to run a console app and connect to web services and upload it there. Or something I often do when I think I need a console app, I don't really need a console app. All I need to do is to create a scheduled job. It doesn't matter if you don't want to run it on a scheduled basis. You can just create the job. It's as easy as creating a console app. It's one class you have to create with one attribute on it, and then it automatically appears in EPiServer here under scheduled jobs. You can basically go in there and you can just say start manually. That's a little trick I use a lot. Is just to do that, and you even have when you're dealing with your Visual Studio, you even have that in the Visual Studio extension. You can go in and say a scheduled job template. There you go. So that's and basically what you can do is you basically get an execute method here, and you can fill in whatever you want to do in your console app. That's what I think is easiest, but you have all the options.
Excellent answer, Alan. Thank you very much. So we're actually at the end of the half hour at this point. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to continue posting to the event page on the Google Hangout, or post your questions using the EpiDev hashtag or the EktronOH hashtag. We'll still be following that hashtag as well for the foreseeable future, but officially switching over to EpiDev. Or email me directly. I know I said my email earlier, james.stout@episerver.com. So feel free to send an email. We can have a phone call if you want any deeper information. In addition, if there's something that you've seen today that you'd like to see more about, feel free to let us know. So if you want to see more into how to create blocks or pages, or if you want to see more into scheduled jobs, if you want to see more into the extensibility of the platform, let us know what you want to see, and we'll make sure that it gets covered as soon as we can. Both Allan and I have a bit of travel in our future, so there may be sporadic episodes for a time being, but should be able to cover all of the questions in some form. So feel free to let us know what you need. We'll address it as soon as we can. And hopefully I can get Allan to actually host some of these episodes without me, so we can do them more frequently, and it's less dependent on my travel and vacation schedule.
Absolutely.
So Allan and Brad, thank you both very much for joining. I thought it was an excellent episode. Definitely glad to have you on, and look forward to having you both on in the future as well.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody who asked some fantastic questions. Questions are what make the episode, so definitely keep those questions coming. Let us know what you want us to talk about. And we'll see what we can put on the schedule for next week. Hopefully we can do something similar if we get enough suggestions for additional things to cover on the EPiServer side. We are going to continue talking about development in Ektron as well, so it's not going to be all about EPiServer all the time from this point forward. So just stay tuned, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.